a markup of a major bill.
We'll break away here. This continues online at cspan.org. Back live now to the House floor for a series of votes.
Consideration of H.R. 2954. Will the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Holding, kindly take the chair?
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the further consideration of H.R. 2954, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill to authorize Escambia County, Florida, to convey certain property that was formerly part of Santa Rosa Island National Monument and that was conveyed to Escambia County subject to restrictions and use and reconveyance.
When the Committee of the Whole rose earlier today, Amendment Number 5, printed in Part A of the House Report 113-340, offered by the gentleman from Alaska, Mr. Young, had been disposed of. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on those amendments printed in Part A of House Report 113-340, on which further proceedings were postponed, in the following order. Amendment Number 1 by Mr. Gerzlava of Arizona. Amendment Number 3 by Mr. Labrador of Idaho. The Chair will reduce to 2 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote after the first vote in this series. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on Amendment Number 1, printed in Part A of House Report 113-340 by the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Grijalva, on which proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevail by a voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment Number 1, printed in Part A of House Report Number 113-340, offered by Mr. Grijalva of Arizona.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 15-minute vote.
Well, the House got an early start today, 9 a.m. Eastern. It's likely their last bit of legislative work for the week. This is a measure combining 10 public lands bills dealing with access, public land restoration, conveyances that mostly would exempt from environmental review requirements, these public lands. They're going to consider 2 amendments, vote on 2 amendments here. This is by Raul Grijalva of Arizona, and his amendment, 15-minute vote. This amendment would remove the underlying bill's prohibition on the Bureau of Land Management acquiring any additional lands until BLM establishes and posts on its website a database of lands on the BLM website. Again, this is a 15-minute vote. Now, we are hoping to be able to take you live to comments from House Speaker John Boehner. He has a briefing with reporters set for 11:30 Eastern. If we are able during this vote, we will take you there live to hear his comments. Nancy Pelosi, the Democratic leader, also speaking to reporters today. We'll have that later in our program schedule and also in our video library. While we wait for that, though, we'll take you back to that postal markup hearing. The Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee is holding a markup on a Postal Reform Act that would try to deal with the Postal Service $5 billion debt. It's underway. We'll take you there live during this vote.
The chair is going to rule that the Paul amendment, as amended by the second-degree amendment, has been approved, and I'd like for us to move on to take other amendments. This is not the finish line. This is not the finish line. Okay, we have the floor, we have conference, and this is not, and we have the courts, so this is an issue that's going to get a lot of airtime before we're done. All right, I thank everybody, and with that, I think we come back. Yes.
You don't want to talk?
All right. With that, we have to actually go ahead, Senator Tester.
Just real quickly, Mr. Chairman. Been in this position and the previous position for 15 years now, and I don't know that I've had anybody ever come up to me and say, it's really important that I get to carry my gun into a post office. And Montana is a very gun-rich state. On the other side of the coin, there has been debates about guns in parking lots of other places before. And let's not kid ourselves. This is about politics. It's about 100% politics. Because if I vote against this amendment that Rand Paul is, the commercials aren't going to say John Tester voted against guns in post offices. They're going to say John Tester voted against guns in parking lots, which is where the concern would be. So let's not fool anybody here. This isn't about good policy. This is about a political election in November and what kind of ads are going to be available to be run and how the record will be distorted in those ads.
Senator McCaskill?
I just want to echo that because, frankly, at the beginning of this debate, it was very clear. Senator Paul said NRA is going to score this. And that is like a blinking red light to everybody. Hey, watch out. NRA is going to score it. You're in big trouble if you don't do what NRA says. So with all due respect, if we want to vote on the parking lot amendment, let's vote on the parking lot amendment and quit obfuscating this with some made-up demand that everybody has to carry their gun in a post office.
Well, I have a hunch we're going to get a chance to vote on the parking lot amendment if and when this bill comes to the floor. And my hope is we'll get a good vote on this bill, and it will come to the floor, and we'll have a chance to revisit this issue. Yes, please.
I just want to add one comment. Most of the amendments we're going to have on this bill are about politics. They're about parochial politics, whether it's parochial representing the printers or not closing down a service center or limiting closure of post offices. They're parochial events and political events too, because the point I would make, this bill is about expanding revenues and cutting costs for the post office. And I think we ought to get back to working on the substance of the postal bill.
Let's do that. Senator Johnson, last word.
Just quick. To me, the way to get past this impasse is to vote on both amendments. I mean, vote on the ability to carry a gun into the parking lot as well as the post office, and vote on an amendment to carry it just in a parking lot. But vote on both of them, okay? I mean, that would be the way to do it. And for the chair to say that, oh, we'll get this vote on the floor, that has not been the history since I've been in the United States Senate. We have not been able to vote on amendments on the floor. It's part of the dysfunction of this place. So here we've got a committee hearing, and I'm happy to move on as well, but I mean, I couldn't sit back and just remain silent here. We are not getting votes on amendments. Just vote.
Let's move on.
Mr. Chairman, I want to echo in support of Senator Johnson's comment. I'd love to vote on an amendment that just deals with parking lots. In fact, I raised that issue the last time and raised the Colorado court case as an example of what a judge has already decided, albeit not for the rest of the country. But it seems to me that we ought to vote on both of those amendments and move on.
I don't know that I can guarantee 100%, but I bet my paycheck will have the opportunity to vote sooner than later on that amendment in the full Senate, and I will work hard to make sure that we have that opportunity. Okay, let's move on. Senator Begich, if you...
Mr. Chairman, I want to make sure it's clear to Senator Heitkamp that if Senator Paul's amendment is offered, and I know there's a process here, we could object to the ruling of the chair and then have a vote and then move forward. If we object to the ruling and there's a Senator Paul's amendment, then I'm going to make it very clear that we're going to have a very simple amendment to echo the issues that I hear from Alaskan gun owners every single day, and that's on this issue of the parking lot. Because that's what the presentation was a week ago by Senator Paul as the issue, and that's what we should hone in on.
No, he mentioned both.
I know he mentioned, but that was the court case he talked about. And the court case is very clear. So I want to make this very clear because I think that's your point, that we should offer it. And I recognize you want to move on, but in some ways, why not just deal with this here and offer his amendment? We'll draft up something very quickly. And I can't imagine if your amendment passes, whatever, then it goes forward. If it doesn't pass, then we have a second amendment or an additional amendment, and then hopefully that will pass and we'll get at least a part of this issue resolved.
All right. Let me just say, Mark, in response, I think we had a good discussion here. I know not everybody's happy with where we are. I think the best way for us to get happy is to continue this conversation. I want us to pass this bill. I want us to be able to bring this bill to the floor I want us to be able to continue this conversation. There's a clear compromise here that can be offered on the floor. It could be a bipartisan amendment. It wouldn't have to be Paul. It could be a Democrat and Republican amendment, and I think there's a good chance it would be adopted. It would address the real underlying concern here. It would take, I think, the politics out of the issue and address what I think is a real concern. As I hearken back to my childhood, I can see how the shotgun in the trunk or the pickup is an issue. Let's just move on, okay? And I promise, I pledge, I'll work with Senator Coburn, Senator Paul, and others on the Democratic side to get this resolved. All right. That having been said, I think the next thing...
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
In all due respect, I'm going to object to your ruling. And the reason for it is this is an issue we should just resolve. And I recognize that the debate on the floor will be the floor. But I think I want to make it very simple in the sense of how to deal with this. But it just seems like, why not just deal with this once and for all? And I think if Senator Paul is thinking about this, we could have a compromise right here that would do what we both want to do and be done.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Pryor.
The problem, from my standpoint, with continuing this is that Senator Paul offered an amendment, legitimate. You offer a second degree, legitimate. We voted on it. Your second degree, which is in the form of substitute, passed. And I don't know procedurally how you get back onto that now without, like you said before, we can be here all day and just keep voting and voting and voting over and over and over. My sense is, and looking at the parliamentary posture here in the committee, at this point, at least for now, we ought to close this issue down, go on to other amendments, and maybe if there's a way procedurally to bring it back up. But we're sort of spinning our wheels here, at least from my perspective.
If I might, if I was chairing this committee, I would have ruled against Senator Paul as well under the parliamentary move. Otherwise, we will never have a process that we can even operate committees on. So I stand with the chairman in saying that this is not an eligible amendment because it's actually a third-degree amendment. We don't allow third-degree amendments in the Senate, even though some of us might want to because we've lost privileges on the floor. So I would just back up the chairman that I would have ruled exactly the same way, that it violates parliamentary procedure and that he can't have it. And I think we move on. So Senator Begich can object to the ruling.
Senator Begich, if I would urge you to I would urge you to withdraw your objection and let us move forward and actually vote on the Paul amendment as amended, as substituted. And I promise you we'll come back and revisit this issue sooner rather than later on the floor. And you will have every opportunity, along with every Democrat and every Republican on this committee, will have every opportunity to craft that proposal. And I think we'll have a good chance of getting it done and doing something smart. And we'll also have the opportunity to get the kind of input from law enforcement agencies and others that we've frankly not been able to receive. So I would urge you not to object and let us move forward.
I would also say that if you object to the ruling of the chair and you are successful, this committee will never operate effectively again because you will have allowed a precedent in the committee for a third-degree amendment, which is a disaster for us, which means it never ends, which means we can never move product through the committee.
All right. Senator Tester.
Mr. Chairman, I understand what the ranking member is saying, but the fact is we will determine whether those happen later on down the line. I think this is an important enough issue. More important, by the way, than the parochial interests you talked about, because we're talking about the Constitution. And I think that brings us to a higher level. And I support Senator Begich in his objection. I, quite frankly, think we should take a vote on these two issues, as Senator Johnson has said, get it behind us, and we could be done by now if we just move on it.
Mr. Chairman, again, and I recognize that some people might think we'll be here all day on all kinds of amendments, but my view is this is part of the committee process. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't, and we have a little tug of war. And so I would move to waive the rules for the purpose of two amendments. One would be the Rand Paul amendment, one would be the Begich amendment, specifically on the issue of the parking lot issue, which will be drawn very quickly here in an amendment form.
Good. The senior Democrat on this committee is not me, by service it's Senator Levin. And from time to time I look to him for advice, and I just leaned over to ask him for his thoughts. And I'm just going to ask him to share those with us.
Mr. Chairman, first of all, we just can't break the rules. We just can't override the rules that way, I believe, or else we're going to have an endless overriding the rules, and that means there are no rules. That may sound familiar to some of you. That's what I believe. And so Senator Coburn is correct. Now, on the other hand, we can, if we wish, by unanimous consent, to have two amendments be in order, let them be drafted, and see if we can come up with unanimous consent agreement to proceed at the end of the markup so there's time to adopt, or not adopt, to write these two amendments. So I would suggest that the chair withhold a vote on adopting the substitute until the end of the markup, and during that time, let's have these two amendments prepared and see if we can get a unanimous consent agreement to vote on them, because that is within the rules, that by unanimous consent we can proceed. But I'd be very careful in just overriding the chair. I just think it opens up a lawless committee procedure.
All right. I think that's good advice. And why don't we, I want to thank Senator Coburn for his comments and his wisdom to try to help us through this point. Why don't we set aside the vote on Paul as amended by my substitute, and why don't we use the remainder of this markup to see what we can do in terms of finding something we can all agree on, or most of us agree on. And with that having been said, let me, I think, do we need unanimous consent?
Just a reminder, you can watch all of that markup. It continues live online at cspan.org. Vote in the House, an amendment vote on the Public Lands Bill, 15-minute vote. We're going to take you back live over to the Capitol to hear from Speaker Boehner.
Employer mandate, wages will be lower. And in the end, the law is going to drive 2.5 million full-time workers out of the economy. Just like that, gone. You know, in the White House, their response was, well, you know, they made a joke out of it. Come on. That's the attitude that's produced the worst economic record in American history. And it's more proof that the law must go. Now, while that may take a new president, there are things that we can do to get the economy growing again and back on track. We can start by expanding markets for American companies to export their products and their services. That would be good for American jobs, and the Republicans and the President agree on this. Listen, Trade Promotion Authority is ready to go. So why isn't it done? It isn't done because the President hasn't lifted a finger to get Democrats in Congress to support it. And with jobs on the line, the President needs to pick up his phone and call his own party so that we can get this done. He can also pick up his pen and finally approve the Keystone Pipeline. Last week, the State Department produced yet another report showing what we already knew, that there's no reason, scientific or otherwise, to block this project any longer. But once again, because some of the President's friends don't like the idea of the pipeline and the tens of thousands of jobs that would be created, it's not going to happen. That brings me to my final point. immigration. You all know for the last 15 months I've talked about the need to get immigration reform done. This is an important issue in our country. It's been kicked around forever, and it needs to be dealt with. Having said that, we outlined our principles last week to our members, principles that our members, by and large, support. It's put together by the leadership team, and they believe it. But I've never underestimated the difficulty in moving forward this year. And the reason I said that we need a step-by-step, common-sense approach to this is so we can build trust with the American people that we're doing this the right way. And frankly, one of the biggest obstacles we face is the one of trust. The American people, including many of my members, don't trust that the reform that we're talking about will be implemented as it was intended to be. The President seems to change the health care law on a whim whenever he likes. Now he's running around the country telling everyone that he's going to keep acting on his own. He's talking about his phone and his pen. And he's feeding more distrust about whether he's committed to the rule of law. Listen, there's widespread doubt about whether this administration can be trusted to enforce our laws. And it's going to be difficult to move any immigration legislation until that changes.
Mr. Speaker, we understand the concerns in your conference on immigration and some of the level of concerns about how the administration would affect this if it was a change. But do you see any reason, in spite of how hard this is, any reason why you would peel back from your attempt to try to move immigration reform this year? Is that still your goal, to be clear here, that you're going to try to move some pieces of immigration reform?
We're going to continue to discuss this issue with our members. But I think the President is going to have to demonstrate to the American people and to my colleagues that he can be trusted to enforce the law as it is written.
And is that the predicate, that you have to see some trust from him? Because talking about this with your members is different than moving ahead with a couple of bills on the floor.
Yes, it is. And understand something. The President is asking us to move one of the biggest bills of his presidency. And yet he's shown very little willingness to work with us on the smallest of things. You know, last week we sent a letter to the President outlining 4 bills that he talked about in the State of the Union that are sitting in the United States Senate, whether it's the Skills Act, the research bill, a couple of other bills. The President could reach out and work with us on those and begin the process of rebuilding the trust between the American people and his presidency.
It seemed like the President did reach out last week, welcoming the principles that you put out. Is this legislation stalled until you see something specific from the President, and what could that be?
As I said, we're going to continue to talk about this with our members, but the President is going to have to rebuild the trust that the American people, my colleagues, can trust him to enforce the law the way it was written.
Earlier this week, we'll see if any proposal on the debt ceiling could get the support of 218 Republicans. After this week, talked to a lot of people. How do you feel now?
Well, I think that we're still looking for the pieces to this puzzle. But listen, we do not want to default on our debt, and we're not going to default on our debt. We're in discussions with members about how we can move ahead. We've got time to do this. We're going to continue to work at it. No decisions have been made.
Will you rule out a clean debt ceiling?
We're continuing to talk to our members.
There have been reports that you offered to try and put forward the approval of the Keystone Pipeline to an extension of the debt limit, but you ran into problems with your conference. How could that not get 218 in your conference? You put red state Democrats in a very difficult position in the Senate. How come you can't get 218 for Keystone?
Well, you know, Mother Teresa is a saint now, but, you know, if the Congress wanted to make her a saint and attach that to the debt ceiling, we probably couldn't get 218 Republican votes. Sorry.
On the trade point, there's apparently as much problem in your caucus with it as in the Democratic caucus, and that the word is that you told the President or that you want at least 50 Democrats to vote for it in the House before you'll bring it up. Is that true?
We need Democrat support in order to pass it. We've got broad support in our caucus, but I don't think we've got 218 votes for this. And so the president's going to have to, he's going to have to produce some votes. Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, when Secretary Lewis said late February the debt limit has to be raised, what do you think the effective date certain actually is, and at what point, by what point does the House actually have to act on something?
Before late February. Yeah, listen, I take Jack Lewis's word. That's what he says it is. That's what it is. Yes, vote.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Speaker, the prospects for immigration legislation, trade legislation, health care legislation appear to be dim and perhaps even dimming. What is Congress going to do this year?
Well, we've got a lot of things on our plate. I think getting the SGR extended through the balance of the year, or hopefully getting a permanent fix to that, would be very helpful. You know, we've got issues with flood insurance that we're going to have to deal with. We've got TRIA that's out there. But I do believe that issues like our version of how we would fix the health care insurance system is an important issue. Tax reform continues to be an important issue. But let me just reiterate one point. I have made clear for 15 months the need for the Congress and the administration to work together on the issue of immigration reform. It needs to get done. I'm going to continue to talk to my members about how to move forward, but the President is going to have to do his part as well.
Speaker Boehner, live coverage from Capitol Hill. We expect to hear from Nancy Pelosi, too, within the hour. We'll have coverage of that as well on the C-SPAN networks. On the floor, the first two amendment votes to a public lands bill. One more amendment vote after this. We expect a motion to recommit as well. Speaker Boehner getting a question there about the conference meeting today and their discussions over the debt limit. Robert Costa of the Post tweeting that the GOP whips were meeting, huddling at the Capitol, going over what could work as a debt limit strategy. The Wall Street Journal writes that the U.S. Treasury will hit its borrowing cap on Friday and has said it could have trouble paying its bills if an increase isn't in place by late February, when it expects to exhaust extraordinary borrowing measures. That from the Wall Street Journal this morning.
The yeas are 190 and the nays are 224. The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for recorded vote on amendment number 3, printed in Part A of House Report 113-340 by the gentleman from Idaho, Mr. Labrador, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment number 3, printed in Part A of House Report number 113-340, offered by Mr. Labrador of Idaho.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of this request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 2-minute vote.
The second of 2 amendment votes on this public lands bill. This is Raul Labrador's amendment dealing with legal fees in challenges to the Interior Secretary's decisions on grazing on public lands. 2-minute vote. We expect the Democratic motion to recommit debate and final passage vote coming up shortly here on the House floor. That should be all for legislative work for this week. And happening on Capitol Hill today, a number of hearings, one of which deals with the IRS targeting of conservative groups. That's the House Oversight Committee. We've been covering that. It's in a break now for this series of votes, but when they resume, you can continue watching that on C-SPAN 3 or online at cspan.org. We're getting your input too, your thoughts, facebook.com/cspan, and comments on Twitter, the hashtag C-SPAN chat.
Aye. On this vote, the yeas are 218, the nays are 198. The amendment is adopted. The question is on the amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Accordingly, under the rule, the committee rises. Okay. Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union has had under consideration H.R. 2954 and pursuant to House Resolution 472, I report the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole.
The Chair of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has under consideration the bill H.R. 2954 and pursuant to House Resolution 472 reports the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole. Under the rule, the previous question is ordered. Is a separate vote demanded or any amendment to the amendment reported from the Committee of the Whole? If not, the question is on the adoption of the amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to authorize Escambia County, Florida to convey certain property that was formerly part of Santa Rosa Island National Monument and that was conveyed to Escambia County subject to restrictions on use and reconveyance.
Does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
The House will be in order. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. Is the gentleman opposed to the bill?
Mr. Speaker, I'm opposed to the bill in its current form.
The gentleman qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Barber of Arizona moves to recommit the bill, H.R. 2954, to the Committee on Natural Resources with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendment. Add at the end of the bill the following. Title 11, Payments in lieu of taxes. Section 1101, Payments in lieu of taxes. For fiscal years 2015 through 2020, there are hereby authorized to be appropriated such sums as may be necessary for payments to counties and other eligible units of government pursuant to Section 6906 of Title 31 United States Code, also known as the Payment in lieu of Taxes, PILT program. Title 12, Protecting Communities from Wildfire. Section 1201, Protecting Communities from Wildfire. In addition to amounts previously made available, there are hereby authorized to be appropriated, 1, $50 million to the Flame Fund established under Section 502B of the Federal Land Assistance Management and Enhancement Act of 2009, 43 U.S.C. 1748B for wildfire suppression on public lands, and 2, $50 million for hazardous fuels reduction on public lands.
The House will be in order. The House will be in order. Does the gentleman from Washington seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I reserve a point of order against the motion to recommit.
Point of order is reserved. The House will be in order. Members, please take your seat or remove your conversation from the House floor. The gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is the final amendment to the bill which will not kill the bill or send it back to committee. If adopted, the bill will immediately proceed to final passage as amended. As my colleagues in this chamber knows well, the Payment in lieu of Taxes program, or PILT, is a source of revenue for counties across our country, especially in rural areas of the United States, like Cochise County in southern Arizona, that have large areas of federal land within their boundaries. Without the PILT program...
Gentleman will suspend. Gentleman is correct. The House is not in order. The House will be in order. Please remove your conversations from the House floor. Members are requested to take their seats. The House will be in order. Gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Without the PILT program, many counties would be forced to cut services, delay infrastructure maintenance and improvement, and local jobs would be lost. While I joined many of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to support reauthorizing PILT for 1 year in the Farm Bill, this is but a short-term solution. My amendment would reauthorize the Payment in Lieu of Taxes program for 5 years. By committing to reauthorize the program for 5 years today, we can give our communities who depend on these funds the long-term certainty they need. In fact, we should really be thinking about and acting to authorize this fund as a mandatory fund. In 2013, PILT meant $5 million in funds for my Southern Arizona district in both Pima and Cochise counties. The Sierra Vista Herald in Cochise...
Will suspend. Gentleman is correct. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. The gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
The Sierra Vista Herald in Cochise County reported on the critical need for PILT in my home district, calling the potential loss of $1.98 million in PILT to the county that the county received in 2013. This would be a significant blow to the county, the paper said.
Gentleman will suspend. The House is not in order. The gentleman is correct. The House will be in order. Please remove your conversations from the House floor. Members are requested to please take their seats. The House is not in order. Gentleman from Arizona is recognized.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. This is an important issue to all of us, particularly those in rural parts of our country, and I appreciate your attention to the matter. A lack of PILT funding, the County Board of Supervisors in Cochise County said, places the large and unsustainable burden on providing services on federal land squarely on the backs of Cochise County taxpayers, while the presence of that land creates a barrier to economic opportunities. Failure, the board said, to provide PILT funding to Arizona counties in a timely manner will critically impact on the budget process, structural solvency of Cochise County, and substantially compromise the county's ability to provide these essential services. Cochise County and counties like it all across this country are required to provide law enforcement, search and rescue missions, emergency services, road building and maintenance, and other community services on or associated with tax-exempt federal land. I urge my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to pass this amendment so we can say to Cochise County in my district and the people I represent in southern Arizona, and so that you can say to the people of your state, particularly those in rural counties, that we won't make them wait and worry about whether or not they'll have the resources to provide these critical services in the future. Mr. Speaker, my amendment also goes on to provide much-needed funding to fight wildfires across this nation. Arizonans know all too well the terrific and horrific effects wildfires have on our communities. Last summer, our state was devastated by the Yarnell Hill fire that swept...
Gentleman will suspend. The gentlewoman is correct. The House will be in order. The House will be in order.
My colleagues,
the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleagues, I'm talking about a great loss our state received when last year the fire swept across 8,400 acres of land in 15 days, and it killed 19 brave firefighters from the Granite Mountain Hotshots, all of whom died in the line of duty. And these tragic fires are not unique to our beautiful state of Arizona. Every year, communities across our nation face wildfires that destroy their land, their homes, and their livelihoods. And given the worst drought in California history, just 1 month into this year, I know that this is an issue on the minds of all of my colleagues in the California delegation as well. 2 summers ago, my district in southeastern Arizona endured the Horseshoe Fire, On May 8, 2011, the Horseshoe 2 fire started on the east side of the Chiricahua Mountains near the community of Portal. The fire continued to burn steadily, heading to the northwest, and on June 8, the fire reached the Chiricahua National Monument, burning into the southeast corner of the park. It was finally extinguished and contained, and when 223,000 acres were burned. We were lucky that summer in southeastern Arizona that there was no loss of life. This amendment would authorize $50 million to the Federal Land Maintenance and Enhancement Act for wildfire suppression in our public lands and $50 million for hazardous fuel reduction. This funding is key to fighting catastrophic fires, wildland fires, and successfully manage fires strategies across our nation. And I ask my colleagues, again on both sides of the aisle, to join with me in both supporting PILT and these critical wildfire programs for our local communities and the people we represent by passing this motion to recommit. I yield back.
Time has expired. Gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to claim time in opposition.
Gentleman from Washington is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I withdraw my reservation on a point of order.
What reservation is withdrawn?
Mr. Speaker, sometimes I have to wonder when I hear these motions to recommit what exactly my friends on the other side of the aisle are thinking. There's 2 points, Mr. Chairman, the committee is not, or House is not in order.
Gentleman is correct. Gentleman will suspend. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. From Washington is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I have to wonder what my friends on the other side of the aisle are thinking with these motions to recommit. The first part of this motion to recommit talks about payment in lieu of taxes, or PILT. Those of us in the western part of the United States especially understand that. Mr. Speaker, last week we funded PILT in the Farm Bill. Where was everybody? I voted for it. Where was everybody? Now it is funded. Second point. PILT is permanently authorized. Permanently authorized. All we have to do now is get the appropriators to fund it, and they'll go through their deliberations. There's no reason for this motion to recommit as it relates to PILT. And secondly, as regard to fighting fires, if I remember correctly, last year we passed the Healthy Forest Bill, but a majority of the people on the other side of the aisle voted no. Now we come down here with crocodile tears and saying we have to fund fighting forest fires. If you had voted for a healthy forest in the first place, it would resolve the problem. This MTR is not worthy of passage. Vote no on the MTR and yes on final passage. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion to recommit. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The noes have it.
Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from Arizona.
I request the ayes and nays. A recorded vote, please.
The ayes and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the ayes and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the ayes and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 8 and Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 5-minute vote on the motion to recommit will be followed by a 5-minute votes on passage of the bill, if ordered, and approval of the journal, if ordered. This is a 5-minute vote.
The underlying legislation combines 10 public land measures into one, dealing with public land access and restoration, conveyances, and environmental review requirements. This is the Democratic motion to recommit, final chance to change the bill before final passage. It's a 5-minute vote after final passage. That should do it for legislative work in the House today. Over in the Senate, they're taking up a 3-month extension of unemployment insurance. At 2 p.m., the Senate is set to hold a procedural vote to limit debate on an amendment by Rhode Island Democratic Senator Jack Reed, which would pay for that 3-month extension, costing an estimated $6.4 billion by extending pension provisions in the 2012 transportation law. 5-minute vote here on the House floor. Off the floor of the House, we're covering a number of hearings, one of which is the House Oversight Committee dealing with the targeting of the IRS targeting of conservative groups. That hearing's in a recess now because of these votes on the House floor. When they resume, you can follow live coverage over on C-SPAN 3, also online at cspan.org. We're getting your reaction on Facebook and Twitter, facebook.com/cspan. Joseph says any organization that seeks to buy elections through whatever means they can ought to be closely scrutinized to ensure they aren't attempting to circumvent the law and legal restrictions that exist. This should apply to George Soros, as well as the Koch brothers, to Daily Kos, as well as the American Enterprise Institute. Another view from Mary, who says, trying to make something out of nothing. Again, that hearing should resume shortly once this series of votes wraps up. Also comments on Twitter about today's hearing. Bean from Tampa says the IRS hearing shows the ongoing harassment of conservatives by the IRS. Kathy with another view saying the power of government against U.S. citizens who disagree with progressive policies is on full display. And on that, one more note on that IRS hearing, we will show that to you in its entirety tonight beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern here on C-SPAN.
On this vote, the yeas are 194.
Mr. King of Iowa. Mr. King of Iowa votes no.
On this vote, the yeas are 194, the nays are 222. The motion is not adopted. The question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it.
On that, I would like a recorded vote.
A recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
And its final passage on H.R. 2954, a bill that combines 10 public land measures into one, dealing with public land access and restoration, environmental review, and conveyances. The administration has issued a statement of administration policy against the bill, strongly opposing the legislation, saying in part in their statement that the bill contains a number of provisions that would undermine the responsible balance of interests and considerations in the stewardship of the nation's lands and natural resources. Part of the statement against the bill from the White House. This is final passage, and it should be the last bit of legislative work in the House for the week.
On this vote, the yeas are 220, the nays are 194. The bill is passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the Journal, which the Chair will put de novo. The question is on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the Journal. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it, and the Journal stands approved. What purpose does the gentleman from Washington seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that in the engrossment of H.R. 2954, the clerk may make technical and conforming changes, and that the amendment to page 17, line 17, refer to the first